It's time to share, there's a world out there, looking for a friend like Jesus. It's time to share, there's a world out there, let's tell him that he loves us so. Let's tell him that he loves us so. Kids time, kids time, kids time.
Hi boys and girls, have you ever tried to water ski? It's lots of fun, isn't it? As you can see by looking at this water ski, there's a special place where you can put your foot. See right here? This looks like a pretty big foot would fit in here, doesn't it? My friend Kim loaned this to me today so I could show it to you. You should always wear a life jacket whenever you water ski, and then you hold firmly to the rope as the water boat pulls you so fast the shore just passes by in a blur. And you're going to go up and down and around the lake or the bay, and you'll feel like you're some kind of miraculous water bird just skimming over the water. But when the boat slows down, you're no longer a miraculous bird, are you? In fact, you're more like a rock and you sink, boom, right down into that water with just your life jacket keeping you afloat. You know, some people have learned to ski on the water in their bare feet. They still hold on to the rope while the motorboat nearly flies ahead of them, and beneath their bare feet, the water feels like a freshly waxed floor, just smooth and slippery. But when the boat slows down, barefoot skiers also sink. Of course, there's a way to plant your feet on the water without sinking. Can you guess what that is? Oh, that's right. You can walk right on top of the water without sinking if the water is frozen. And you can skim so fast over that icy surface that the air feels like wind blowing in your face. That is, if you know how to ice skate. Our Bible story today, however, tells of a man who walked on water, and the water wasn't frozen. He didn't water ski, or barefoot ski, or even ice skate. He looked to Jesus, and Jesus performed a miracle. You know, boys and girls, Jesus can do anything. And if you look to him, he'll work miracles for you too. I know he will. Now Ranger Jim is going to show us one of God's creatures who lives in the water.
Hi there, boys and girls. Ranger Jim here saying welcome to Nature Time. We're glad you could join us again today. As usual, we have something you haven't seen before. We have some fish to show you today. The first one we're going to be showing you is a small bluegill that you can see that we have in the jar here. And the bluegill gets his name from the tiny little blue tab on his gill. And he is part of the sunfish family, includes the sunfish and the bluegill, the bass. They have a very unusual way of reproducing. The male goes out in the spring of the year, and you may see this if you're walking around a small pond or a lake. You may see some little round places like this that are bright. Maybe the rocks are showing, and the rest of the area around it is dark and covered with silt. If you look carefully, you'll see Mr. Bluegill. He's there swimming around in a circle, fanning his tail and his fins and moving the water about, and he washes all of the debris away from the sand and the small rocks. There's a small depression there, and then he tries to entice a beautiful young lady bluegill to come. When she's ready, her eggs are developing in her body. He entices her to come. He swims around her and courts her and asks her if she'd like to come and lay her eggs in his little nest. And when she lays her eggs in the nest, the sun reflecting off of the stones and the sand becomes very warm there. And sometimes a young female will say, yes, I'd like to lay my eggs there. So she lays her eggs in his little round nest, and she swims away. That's the last thing she has to do with raising her babies. The male stays there, and he continues to defend that little round spot. You look for them around a pond or a lake, and you will see them. He defends it from anyone that wants to come near there. Any fish or any animal, anything that comes near there, the bluegill will dart out and attack it and defend them until they hatch, and they're called fry. They're tiny little things like that you can hardly see. If you see a school of them in the water, it looks almost like dust in the water. But that's the way the bluegill reproduces. And then we have a larger fish over on the piece of wood that we have for you to see that has some beautiful pink reflections on its side. That's a rainbow trout. Now the rainbow trout loves to reproduce. He loves to live in cold water. He loves streams that have cold water and stones. He likes to hide behind big rocks. And he's a predator. He swims out and catches smaller fish. But when he's ready to spawn, or when she is ready to spawn, they spawn in the open water. The female swims along and lays her eggs. They simply fall to the bottom amongst all the rocks, and that's how they reproduce. This fish is technically called what we call a steelhead trout. They live in Lake Michigan, and then they spawn. They come up the very rivers in which they themselves hatched the year or two before, and that's where they lay their eggs. And then the large fish that we have here, you see some eggs out in front of this fish. Those are salmon eggs. This fish is called a king salmon or a Chinook salmon, and it is one of the largest freshwater species that we have. This fish weighs about 20 pounds, and these fish grow to be 85, maybe 90 pounds. And those are really huge, big fish. But they all came about by the same way of these tiny eggs that you see here. The mother laid them in the stream in the fall of the year. Her last act, after she lays the eggs, she travels up the stream, swimming against the water, against the current, up waterfalls, across rocks, to the very sandbar where she hatched herself many years before, and she deposits her eggs. Many times in the stream, boys and girls, I have watched the female salmon as she comes up the stream and she's laying the eggs. It looks like a little machine gun. They're popping out of the bottom of her belly, and they hit in the cold water and the rocks, and they bounce along, and coming behind her is the daddy fish, the male salmon, and he is spraying a material called a milt. It's the color of milk. It looks all the world like he's spraying milk on the eggs, and that's fertilization in the open water, we call it, okay? And that makes the eggs hatch. They fall down into cold water, a hidden view from most of the predators that would find them. Almost all of the creatures around a trout stream or a salmon stream love salmon eggs, including gulls and mink and fish of all kinds, and they feed upon those. And many of the small salmon perish, the eggs perish before they ever hatch. But after 2 weeks or so, there's a black spot forms on that tiny little egg, and that's the eye of the salmon that formed first. And then eventually, after 2 or 3 weeks, a tiny little fish comes out of that egg. You can imagine how small they are. They come out of that, and they live in the stream for 6 months or so, maybe 8 months, until they're about this size. And then on a warm spring day, when the weather is just right, when it's dark at night, no moon, the salmon begin to swim down the stream, and they swim back out into the ocean. And that's where they spend the next 2 years, depending upon their species, sometimes as long as 4 years. They leave this size, they swim out in the ocean, they go follow a path all around for many years, eating and feeding and growing larger and larger and larger from a tiny fish this size until they're a humongous big fish weighing 85 or 90 pounds sometime. And how do they find their way back? I've always wondered about that. When I was a young boy, I wondered how the fish can find their way back. And when they come back out of the ocean, they come into the larger rivers. They pass many streams the size of this one. They pass Green Creek or Mud Creek or Pike Creek or Johnson's Creek or Mud River or all of these streams. They're still smelling that scent. That is their home stream. That's what they're looking for. Until finally they find the right one and they turn and go up there. And how can they do that? Because our wonderful Creator God gave them the ability. One of the most sensitive of all of the creatures that God made is the salmon's ability to detect scent. And that's how they come back to their stream. You see, God wanted these fish to come back to perpetuate the salmon because it was part of His creation. Now, I have something in my pocket I want to use to illustrate for you that. I have a small bag here, and I have a tablespoon. And boys and girls, this is a tablespoonful of salt. And this wonderful creature that God made, this salmon, if we would dissolve this salt in 18 Olympic-sized swimming pools, this creature could detect that amount of salt and that tremendous amount of water. So once again, a wonderful creature that God has made for us to see and enjoy and study. Boys and girls, He's coming soon. Ranger Jim looks forward to that day we can go with Jesus and go on a nature hike through the universe. What a time that will be. Jesus, the one that created it, can show us just exactly how He made it. We can appreciate it and love Him more for great creative ability. So once again, Ranger Jim here saying, don't forget to tell Jesus that you love Him. Because boys and girls, He really does love you.
Hey buddy, what you playing?
I am playing a song about sailing.
I know a song about sailing too.
What is it?
Over the Sea.
Oh, that's such a good song. Do you have a text for us?
Yeah, it's for as the heaven is high above the earth, so great is His mercy toward them that fear Him. Psalms 103:11.
I love Over the Sea. Boys and girls, let's sing this one together.
Over the sea,
Hi, today we're going to make my Aunt Brenda's favorite potato corn chowder. I love it too. My cousin Linda Kay likes it, and Aunt Brenda probably makes it more than she wants to. Well, I'll read the recipe for you. 5 medium potatoes, peeled and diced. 2 cans creamed corn. 1 onion diced. Celery salt to taste. Salt to taste. Onion salt or onion powder. Soy milk, just enough to make a nice consistency. And cornstarch to thicken if desired. Right here, I already have the potatoes cooking, and the onions. And so I'm going to start with our creamed corn. Pour the creamed corn in. And I like to use regular corn or corn off the cob. Just pour this in. It adds a little crunch to your soup while you're eating it. I didn't add this to the recipe. It's optional, but if you like corn, then you can add this. It's really good. Now we'll add our seasonings. Add some salt. Maybe 2 little pinches. Spread that around. Then we'll add our celery salt. Put some of that in. Stir that up. We have our also our soy milk, and I like better the milk, but you can use any kind of soy milk you want. And this is just as a thinner. You don't want too much. We'll go over here. We'll shake this. There we go. You might want to, when you go to shake it, go over a sink or something because it spills. Sometimes goes everywhere. So we'll add some of this as a thinner. Just a little bit. Okay. Stir that all up. And if it looks too thick, depending on how you like your soup, if you like it thick or thin, but just as a thinner, you can use soy milk. Or if you like it thick, you can use a little bit of cornstarch, and you pour it in, and it thickens your soup. I think I need to add a little more soy milk to this, maybe a 1/2 cup or so. It's looking a little bit thick. Take this. It's looking pretty good. Go. Add some more just to thin it down a little bit. Stir. This is a really good soup for a whole meal. All you need is a little salad, maybe have your mom make some rolls or something, and it's perfect. Well, you see, that's all there is to it. It's really simple and easy and really good. Well, remember, until next time, keep cooking and eat healthy.
Come, I have a wonderful story to tell you. My name is Simon. I'm a fisherman from the village of Capernaum on the Sea of Galilee. I'm also known as Peter. The name Peter was given to me by the most wonderful man to ever walk the earth, Jesus of Nazareth. You know, perhaps I should start at the beginning. One day, as I was getting my nets ready, my brother Andrew came running to me. He was so very excited. He was shouting and hollering. He could barely catch his breath. Once he did so, he told me that he had found the Messiah. Not only had he found the Messiah, he said he'd spend a day with him. I didn't know what to think at that statement. You see, we Israelites have long awaited the coming of the Messiah, the promised one of God. So I decided I would go and see this Messiah for myself. You know, when I first saw Jesus, he looked like any other man to me. He didn't have a halo or anything, but yet he was very special. He was humble, yet so very sure of himself. You know what he did at our first meeting? He changed my name. He said, from now you'll be called Peter. You know, I always kind of liked the name Simon, but Jesus thought I should be called Peter. You see, the name Peter means rock. I never thought myself as fitting a name like rock. I never thought I was very as solid as a rock, but the name Peter stuck. We went home soon after meeting Jesus. A few days later, Andrew and I were fishing on the Sea of Galilee We could hear shouting from shore. As we looked towards shore to see who was shouting, we could see it was Jesus. Follow me, he was shouting, and I will make you fishers of men. Fishers of men. Whatever could that mean? I didn't understand, but to follow me was clear enough. And I knew at that very minute that whatever it was that he was calling us to do, it was by far more important than our nets, my business, or the boat. And so we followed Jesus, my brother and I. We were with him constantly for 3 years and saw him do many, many things. I saw him heal many sick people. Why, he can make the lame walk. He could even order the wind, and it would obey him. He did so many wonderful things. He brought so much joy into the world. There's one event that is very special to me that I would like to tell you about. One day, Jesus had fed over 5,000 men with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And not only did everyone eat their fill, but there was actually 12 basketfuls left over. Oh, how the people marveled that day. Right after that miracle, Jesus asked us all to go to the other side of the lake. He wanted to stay behind and pray, and he would follow later. As we made our way across the lake, we hadn't gone very far out when all of a sudden a horrible storm came. Oh, and it was a bad storm. The wind blew, the waves were slamming our little boat, and we were going side to side. We were being blown all over the lake. We were frantically taking water out by the bucketfuls and throwing it overboard just to keep from sinking. All of a sudden, someone yelled that they saw something in the water. Someone else screamed, "It's a ghost." Well, we all looked. It wasn't a ghost. It was Jesus. Jesus was walking to us on the water. Oh, what a marvel that was. I stepped forward and shouted to him, "Lord, if it is you, have me come to you on the water." "Come," he said. And I stepped out of the boat. Oh, and as I stepped out, I was so frightened, but yet when I put my foot on the water, it felt as I was on solid ground. I walked towards Jesus. I was walking on water. Oh, I was so excited. As I walked towards Jesus, I took my eyes off him for only an instant to look back at my companions. And as I did so, I started to sink in the water. "Lord, save me," I cried. I was so frightened. "Lord, save me." Jesus was there in an instant. He held out his hand to me, and as he held out his hand, he said, "Why have ye such little faith? Why did you doubt, Peter?" You see, I had taken my eyes off of Jesus, and as I did so, I started to sink in the water. So remember, no matter what happens in your life, don't ever take your eyes off of Jesus, because Jesus is always at your side.
Middle of the storm, God is. Who's in the middle of the storm? God is. Who's in the middle of the storm? God is. I'm not afraid, for God is in the storm. Who's in the middle of the storm?
Thank you, Cadet Sisters, for that message and song. Well, I have a special treat, boys and girls. I have my friend Jonathan here, and he's going to join me on sharing time. And I've asked him to share with you ways that he shares Jesus. Can you do that, Jonathan?
Well, I have a friend a couple of years ago that I play with him a lot. Like every day or so, I would go to his house. Sometimes I would eat, and I would pray before each meal. And he seemed confused. He would kick me, and he would tap me on the shoulder while I was doing it.
He didn't pray before his meals?
No. It seemed like he was Hindu, though I didn't even know at the time.
Mm-hmm. And so what would happen?
Well, I would talk to him about Jesus, but he never really talked to me about it. He would just go on and do whatever he does with me.
But you know what? Sometimes that's the way it is, isn't it, boys and girls? When we share Jesus, we don't always know when we sow those little seeds of kindness and seeds of faith. We don't know what's going to happen with that, but it's our job to share our faith and to share Jesus, and Jesus does the rest and sends His Holy Spirit, doesn't He? So we can pray for your friend and that Jesus would touch his heart. Well, let's read a couple of the letters right here today to the boys and girls. I love hearing from you boys and girls. And I have a picture right here. Can you hold this one up, Jonathan, so they can see? And I have a picture. Let's see. This letter is from Christy. And it says, Dear Brenda, I'm 8 years old, so I'm older than the kids in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. I love helping people, so I help the little kids when they need help or when a kid my age is picking on them. And me and my mom sometimes on Sunday after church, we go to the nursing home and sing Christian songs, and at Christmas we give them a gift. I love helping people. Love, Christy. And you know what, Christy? Thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm glad that you also don't join in when people are picking on someone. It's never good to do that, is it? Now let's see this picture right here. She's also drawn me a picture of her helping people. There's some people here in a wheelchair. See that? And then she's got people singing up here. I think she probably sings to them. That's nice, Christy. Thank you. Do you have a letter over there that you can open?
Well,
And let's see what while you're opening one of those, I'll read one of these. Oops, I got another picture. You can hold this picture up for me, Jonathan. And I have, this one says, Dear Brenda, my name is Peyton, and I am 3 years old, and my mommy's helping me write this letter. I love to tell people about Jesus, and my daddy has some Bible stories called An Hour with Your Bible, and I take them with me when we go to the grocery store, and I give them to all the people as we pay for our food. Then I tell them to read about Jesus. I want everybody to know Jesus. Oh, this says, Love, Peyton. I want everyone to know about Jesus too, didn't he? And he said, this is my picture of me and my brother, Brandon. He is 18 months old. He's a cute little thing, isn't he?
yes.
Do you have a letter over there you want to read?
Okay, this one says, Dear Brenda, I am 8 years old. My name is Brianna. I enjoy your show. Please send me a letter back. Sincerely, Brianna. I share Jesus by telling stories about Jesus.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, you know what? I think that's a very good way to share Jesus when we share stories, isn't it? Maybe we have time for just one more quick letter. Oh, and I've got such a pretty picture here, too. See that? From Emily. It says, Dear Brenda, I enjoy Kids Time very much. I think it is a nice show. I like special music best, and I witness for Jesus by bringing my best friends to church. Love, Emily. And this is a lilac tree in my backyard. Isn't that pretty?
Yeah, it is pretty.
Thank you, Emily. I really enjoyed that picture, and I'm glad that you shared Jesus. Well, I want to thank Jonathan for joining me today and telling me all about how you shared Jesus. Let's keep witnessing and sharing Jesus, won't you, boys and girls? Well, that's all the time we have today. But until next time, remember, it's kids' time to share Jesus.